everyone, welcome back. Ready to unpack how economics have played out over the last, for 75 years? And AI, how's that changing things for everybody, no matter what generation you're in? We're going deep on this one, got some really cool articles and even some podcast snippets to bring in different perspectives.
It's a lot to cover, yeah.
It is. But hey, that's what these deep dives are for, right? Getting past the surface and really figuring out how things connect. Like, we've already heard about how baby boomers had this, I don't know, almost magical economic run, right?
Right.
But is that the whole story? And what about millennials? They're kind of rewriting the rules on work, on money. Is that good, bad, somewhere in between?
And then you've got Gen Z coming up, digital natives practically born with a smartphone in hand.
Exactly. AI is like their playground, but does that mean they're set for life? Or are there downsides we're not talking about enough? All right, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's set the stage here. Who are we even talking about when we throw these labels around? Boomers, millennials, Gen Z?
Yeah, good point. So we're generally talking about boomers being born between 1946 and 1964. Millennials, think 1981 to 1996. And Gen Z, they're the youngest crew, 1997 to 2012.
Okay, so roughly speaking.
Right. It's not an exact science. There's always overlap. Some people might feel they fit better with a different generation, but this gives us a starting point to understand the big economic forces, the trends that shaped each group.
All right, so starting with the boomers, our sources paint this picture of them landing in this almost mythical economic sweet spot. What was going on back then that made things so different for them compared to what we see today?
Okay, so picture this. It's post-World War II, the economy's in recovery mode, industries are rebuilding, there's huge demand for workers. Boomers are stepping into a world of opportunity. Not only were they more likely to find long-term jobs, but these jobs came with pensions, benefits packages we rarely see today.
Yeah, and on top of that, our article, Boomers, Millennials, and Zoomers, it pointed out how much more affordable housing was back then. Owning a home wasn't some far-off dream for most people.
That combination, job security, decent benefits, plus being able to buy a house, it created this level of economic stability that, honestly, a lot of boomers enjoyed for their whole working lives.
It's so different from what later generations have had to deal with, right?
It is, yeah. Very different.
My own parents are boomers, and it's wild hearing them talk about loyalty to their companies. Like, the idea of switching jobs multiple times in a career, it was practically unheard of for them.
It was a different world, and the Boomers, Millennials, and Zoomers article, they really highlighted that. Boomers valued company loyalty, and often the companies valued them back. It was a two-way street.
Which makes sense in that context, but you said it yourself, it's a different world now. And the From Boomers to Zoomers podcast that we've got in the mix here, it brings up some of the challenges that, well, those same boomers are facing today.
Yeah. So while they might have had those advantages earlier in their careers, now they're facing a whole new set of hurdles. Technology, for example, it's changing so fast.
Oh, tell me about it.
They're having to constantly adapt their skills to stay relevant, especially if they haven't retired yet.
I had to walk my dad through how to use a QR code just last week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's retirement anxieties, which are huge. People are living longer, healthcare costs are going up. And for some boomers, that job for life and the pension that came with it, well, it hasn't quite turned into the comfy retirement they thought it would be.
Yeah. And the podcast touched on age discrimination too, right? That being a real problem for some boomers.
Oh, absolutely.
Even with decades of experience, they're finding it tough to compete in a job market that often seems to favor younger workers.
Which brings up an interesting question. If you're someone who identifies with that boomer experience, how do you leverage all that knowledge, all those years of expertise, while also adapting to the demands of a workplace that's changing so quickly? It's a challenge that needs some creative thinking for sure.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder if maybe that traditional career path, the one boomers relied on, if it's even the only model for success anymore. Speaking of shaking things up, let's move on to millennials. This generation, it seems like they're totally rewriting the rules on work and wealth, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Millennials, they came of age during a very different economic climate. Think recessions, student loan debt that's just through the roof, housing prices that are sky high.
Feels like they were dealt a much tougher hand than the boomers.
In a lot of ways, yes, and it's important to understand that. They're operating on a much less forgiving economic playing field. That path to financial stability that worked for boomers. It's just not as accessible for them.
The From Boomers to Zoomers podcast, it really got into how millennials have basically had to ditch that traditional career path and embrace the gig economy, entrepreneurship, remote work. anything but tea, that whole job for life mindset.
And that raises a huge question. Is this millennial approach, which, let's be honest, is often born out of necessity, is it actually sustainable in the long run? Does it lead to financial security? Or is it, as some argue, a recipe for instability? There's no easy answer.
So it's not just about adapting to a different economic reality. It's about understanding what those adaptations might mean down the road, years down the line.
Exactly.
But one thing our sources do agree on is that millennials, they're incredibly tech savvy.
Absolutely. This generation, they grew up alongside the internet. Digital fluency, that's their strength.
It's like a second language to them.
In fact, the Boomers, Millennials, and Zoomers article even highlighted how comfortable they are using online job platforms. Their digital skills are already shaping industries.
Yeah, it's almost a given for them. Whereas for some boomers, those are skills they're still developing.
Right.
So while millennials might be facing these economic challenges, that tech fluency, it gives them a real advantage in a world that's increasingly online, right?
It's a key advantage, absolutely. But then we have to consider how the tech landscape itself is evolving, especially with the rise of AI. And this is where Gen Z comes in, the true digital natives. They're entering the workforce at a time when AI is not just some concept anymore, it's reality.
And this is where I start to feel old. I remember dial-up internet, and these Gen Z kids are coding circles around me. It's intimidating.
It is remarkable how quickly technology changes.
Hmm.
But you've hit on a key point. Gen Z, they've got this unique advantage. They're coming in as AI is exploding, and they're perfectly positioned to ride that wave.
The Boomers, Millennials, and Zoomers article, it really emphasized how comfortable they are with AI-powered job platforms. And it even predicted that AI is going to fundamentally reshape the industries that Gen Z is just now starting to enter.
Exactly. But the From Boomers to Zoomers podcast, it also cautioned about the flip side of this. Job displacement due to automation. That's a very real concern for Gen Z, maybe even more so than for previous generations. It's that double-edged sword. They're the best equipped to thrive in an AI world, but also, potentially, the most susceptible to its disruptions.
Which brings us to a much bigger question, doesn't it? This isn't just a Gen Z issue. AI and automation, they're changing the game for everyone, no matter when you were born, what industry you're in.
You're absolutely right. We can't talk about generational economics without addressing the elephant in the room, AI, and its potential to honestly disrupt everything.
From Boomers to Zoomers really went deep on this, how AI is already transforming industries, the need for upskilling to stay relevant, even the ethical considerations, which we can't just brush aside.
And what's fascinating is that AI isn't just about replacing jobs. It's also creating new ones. But those new jobs, they'll likely require a very different skill set. It's a shift we all need to prepare for.
There was this one quote from the podcast that really stuck with me. Finding the balance between AI's efficiency and the irreplaceable value of human creativity.
It's a great quote, yeah.
It really captures that tension we're all facing as AI becomes more and more part of our lives.
It makes you think.
Mhm.
In a world that's relying more and more on AI, what are the skills, the qualities that will make you indispensable? What makes you stand out?
Like, we almost need to redefine what valuable even means in the context of work, right?
Exactly. And that leads to a crucial question for you, our listener. What jobs do you think are most vulnerable to being automated? And on the flip side, which ones do you think are safest? This isn't some theoretical question anymore. It's about understanding the future job market.
It's about where the opportunities will be and what skills you might need to learn, to acquire, to stay ahead of the curve. And that's exactly what we'll be digging into as we continue this deep dive. We'll break down the specific challenges and opportunities for each generation in this AI-powered world and what it all means for your personal journey.
All right, so we've spent some time exploring how each generation's faced a unique set of economic realities.
Right. Boomers, millennials, Gen Z, all different landscapes.
Exactly. But now let's shift gears a bit and think about what this means for you, our listener. It's not just about understanding historical trends, right?
No, it's got to be practical, too.
It's about applying these insights to make informed decisions for your own career, for your financial well-being.
Okay, I like that. So let's break it down generation by generation. Let's get practical. What can boomers do to navigate this world that's changing so rapidly?
If you're a boomer and you're feeling the pressure to adapt to all this new technology, First off, remember, it's never too late to learn.
Never too late.
Those tech skills, they might seem intimidating at first, but there are so many resources out there to help you catch up.
Yeah, online courses, workshops, heck, even just asking a tech-savvy grandchild for help. It goes a long way.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the value of your experience. One thing that really struck me from the From Boomers to Zoomers podcast was this idea that boomers could actually play a crucial role in mentoring and guiding younger generations. The ones who are just now navigating the gig economy.
Oh, interesting. Like boomers becoming the mentors.
Yeah, because they've seen economic upswings, downturns, they've built careers, they have this wealth of knowledge to share, and almost like a natural fit for them to become those trusted advisors, especially in a world that can feel so uncertain, so unpredictable.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And when it comes to those retirement anxieties we talked about, planning and proactivity, those are key, right?
Absolutely. The podcast really emphasized that. It's not just about hoping for the best, it's about taking control of your financial future.
Being proactive.
Reassessing your retirement goals, exploring different income streams, maybe even considering part-time work or consulting to supplement your savings. It's about being realistic about what you need and making adjustments as you go.
So for boomers, it's about leveraging their experience, but also staying adaptable.
Right.
But what about millennials? They're already knee-deep in the gig economy. What should they be thinking about?
For millennials, the key takeaway is to be mindful of the potential downsides of the gig economy.
Okay, downsides like what?
Well, the flexibility and the variety of work, it can be appealing, sure, but
Mhm.
it often comes at the cost of stability and traditional benefits, things like healthcare. Those often get left behind.
Yeah, that was a big point in the From Boomers to Zoomers podcast. It made me think about how the gig economy might actually be widening the wealth gap that already exists between millennials and boomers.
That's a critical point. Millennials are already facing an uphill battle financially, and the lack of those safety nets, the ones that came with traditional jobs, it can make it that much harder to build long-term financial security.
So what can they do? Is it all doom and gloom, or are there ways to make the gig economy work without, sacrificing your future?
It's definitely not all doom and gloom. There are absolutely things millennials can do to create stability within this new work model. Prioritizing saving for retirement, even if it's just small amounts, that's huge.
Yeah, makes sense, especially since a lot of gig workers don't have employer-sponsored retirement plans.
Right. And exploring options for affordable healthcare coverage, that's essential too. It's about recognizing the gaps that the gig economy can create and taking steps to fill them in on your own.
So it sounds like it's a lot about being strategic, recognizing that the gig economy, it's a different ballgame. You can't just take on as many gigs as possible. It's got to be about building a secure future.
Exactly. It's a shift in mindset.
Yeah.
And then we've got Gen Z just now starting to enter this whole landscape. They're digital natives, they're comfortable with AI, but what do they need to know to succeed in this evolving world?
Yeah, it's almost like they have a head start, right? Born into the digital age.
Right, but the Boomers, Millennials, and Zoomers article cautioned that just being tech savvy, it's not enough anymore.
Okay, so what's the next level?
Gen Z, they need to be thinking about developing skills that complement AI, not just skills that AI can easily replicate.
So it's less about competing with AI and more about figuring out how to work alongside it.
Exactly, and that means focusing on those uniquely human skills that AI, at least for now, can't replicate. Critical thinking, creativity, complex problem solving, emotional intelligence, those are the things that are going to be increasingly valuable.
It makes me think about how education needs to change to prepare Gen Z for this reality. It's not enough to just teach them how to code. It's about nurturing those human skills that will set them apart.
It's a shift in focus. And honestly, it's something that all of us, regardless of our generation, should be thinking about. Lifelong learning, it's not optional anymore. It's essential.
So we're all students in a way, constantly learning and adapting as technology changes and the job market shifts.
That's a great way to put it. And it highlights something really crucial. This isn't just about individual success. It's about understanding how these generational trends, how these technological advancements are impacting society as a whole.
Yeah, it's bigger than any one generation, any one career path.
It's about creating an economy that works for everyone, a future where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
Okay, I like that. Creating a future where everyone can thrive.
And as we move into the final part of our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. As AI becomes more and more a part of our lives, what responsibility do we have, both individually and as a society, to ensure that the benefits of AI are shared equitably across generations.
That's a big question. It's not enough to just talk about AI's potential. We have to think about how to harness that potential in a way that benefits everyone, not just a select few.
It's about making sure that the future we're creating is one where everyone has the opportunity to succeed, regardless of when they were born or what technological skills they have. It's about a future that's fair and just for all generations.
Okay, so we talked about boomers, millennials, Gen Z, how AI is impacting things for everyone. But I'm wondering, where do small businesses fit into all of this? They're kind of the backbone of a lot of local economies, right?
Yeah, they are. And they're definitely feeling these shifts, both the generational ones and the technological ones, in a big way. It's
Yeah.
a lot to navigate.
The From Boomers to Zoomers podcast had some really interesting points on this. It's not just about finding workers with the right skills, right?
Yeah.
It's about understanding what makes each generation tick, what motivates them, what are they looking for in a job, and then how do you create a workplace that appeals to all these different groups?
You've got it.
Like,
Yeah, you might have a boomer who's seeking stability, a clear path for moving up in the company, that sense of loyalty, right?
right.
Then you've got a millennial who's all about work-life balance, flexibility, opportunities for growth, both personal and professional.
And then Gen Z, they're like, purpose-driven work, strong company culture, are they going to make a difference in the world?
Exactly. So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to attracting and keeping good people. Small business owners, they got to be adaptable. They got to understand what makes each generation unique.
So it's not just about changing how you hire people, it's about the whole company culture.
It's about creating a culture that actually encourages different generations to work together, to mentor each other.
Yeah.
Imagine you've got a boomer with, I don't know, 20, 30 years of experience in some field, mentoring a millennial who's bringing in all these fresh digital-first ideas.
Oh, I like that cross-generational mentorship thing.
It's about recognizing that each generation has something valuable to offer, and then using those differences to make the whole company stronger.
Turning those differences into a strength. Love it. But speaking of adapting, we got to talk about AI. Can't ignore the elephant in the room, right?
Absolutely not. It's not just individuals who are being impacted by AI. It's changing how businesses operate, too.
Yeah, we talked about how it's affecting individual workers, but
The From Boomers to Zoomers podcast was really clear on this. Small businesses, they have to embrace technology, and especially AI, if they want to stay competitive.
it's more than just automating a few tasks here and there, isn't it?
It's about using AI to make smarter decisions across the board, increasing efficiency, streamlining things, even understanding your customers better.
You know, it's funny. In some ways, small businesses might actually be better positioned to use AI effectively.
Oh, that's a great point. I hadn't thought about that.
Think about it, big corporations, they can be slow to adapt, right? Lots of bureaucracy, old systems.
True.
Small businesses, they can be way more nimble, more responsive to change. They can experiment with AI tools, figure out what works for them specifically.
It's not about having the biggest budget, the most resources. It's about being willing to adapt, try new things, experiment.
Yeah, being flexible.
That's the key.
Hmm.
Small businesses that can really integrate AI into what they do and create that positive multi-generational work environment. Those are the ones that are going to thrive.
So it's a lot to juggle, but it sounds exciting too. Like there's so much potential for growth, for innovation, when you combine that human spark with the power of AI.
It is exciting. It's a time of big change, no doubt.
Yeah.
But as we've seen throughout this deep dive, change also brings opportunities. Every generation, they've shown how resilient they are, how creative they can be in finding solutions to tough problems.
They find a way.
And when you combine that human spirit with what AI can do, there's reason to be optimistic about the future, both for small businesses and for the economy as a whole.
Wow, this has been such an insightful journey exploring generational economics and the impact of AI.
We've covered a lot of ground, yeah?
From that post-war boom that shaped the boomers to the gig economy and all its challenges to this AI-powered world we're living in.
Hopefully our listeners have come away with a better understanding of how all these forces are connected, how they shape our lives, not just individually, but as a society.
The biggest takeaway for me is this. Each generation, they might have their own unique experience, their own struggles.
Right.
But ultimately, we're all in this together. We're all trying to figure out how to navigate this changing world, how to build a future that works for everyone.
Well said.
Yeah.
And the more we understand about these trends, the better equipped we are to actually shape that future in a positive way.
So to our listeners out there, Keep learning, stay curious, and never underestimate your ability to adapt, to innovate, to thrive, no matter what the future throws your way.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.